We run about 600 head of beef cows. We have an outfitting business, and we also have some land that's enrolled in the CRP. And our goal is to make sure that we're just doing the best we can to take care of the kind of land we have. This farm, like many around here over the years, has been tilled up. When my grandfather was here in the 30s, they had the land tilled up. In the 80s, we had to liquidate the cows and farm the ground. And as I got older, I realized that's really not the best practice for the kind of land I have. Overall, most of the land we simply seeded to hay and then returned to permanent pasture. I think as farmers, we have to recognize that we don't just raise beef cattle, or we don't just raise corn or soy. We should also be producing clean water. We should also be producing healthy soil. We should be producing biodiversity. Now I like to think that we raise beef cattle and wildlife and clean water and clean air. Agriculture isn't about focusing on one thing. I have to focus on all the things that goes into producing that beef. And if I focus on all of those things and do them well, the beef cattle end of it takes care of itself. My tipping point was when I switched my focus from production to stewardship. Things started falling into place. And that's what we're doing with stewardship. We're focusing on the quality of our soil. We're focusing on the quality of our biodiversity. We're focusing on the quality of our water. And all those things have a huge impact on the quality of the beef I raise.
A lot of the things that the caring that Seth's had to detail with the land, with making sure that the water quality is going downstream from us in a safer way, the buffer strips, the rotation that he does. He's really opened up my eyes to a lot of things that are best practice with all of that.
Okay, what do we got?
Just go ahead and sign it.
And he's so passionate about what he does.
Okay.
This is, again,
On the farm is actually a little watershed that I live in that feeds the Nottoway River, that feeds the Missouri River, that feeds the Mississippi. But there's only 3 of us that farm in it. There's 2,500 acres in the watershed if you look at my 2 neighbors and me. We know the practices along it. We know that I can build a pond at the head of it to catch the rest of the phosphorus coming off the crop field. And then we can see the other ponds we've built along that catch runoff from the different hillsides. And then even when we go down to the stream and look at it, we can see how it's cleaned up. And when you look down at the river, we can see how the birds migrate, how the deer migrate, how different animals move around. We haven't brought it back to what it was when my great-grandfather came here, but we've brought it back to something that I think is sustainable and can be built upon. And that's the kind of practice of saying, you know, that pond alone probably isn't going to protect our surface water to the level we need today. But that pond with a sediment basin above it and a shallow water habitat below it, I think then we're getting to the point that the water that leaves my farm might actually be cleaner than what fell upon it. As farmers, we really are taught to be driven by revenue instead of return on investment. Why am I chasing yield when yield and profit don't always directly correlate? As a matter of fact, they seldom do. When we look at the inputs we've become dependent on in agriculture, the cost of these products have gone up at 6-7% a year since 1950. Well, at the same time, the products we raise, even adjusted for yield, they've only increased at 1 or 2% a year. We're all understanding we can't sustain this simply because we've become too dependent on finite resources, and we have to find better ways to do this. And the cool thing for me is a lot of the practices that we talk about, a lot of the practices that I'm learning about do regenerate our resources, they do reduce costs, and we can still maintain acceptable yields with them. Much of caring for the land and the conservation ethic came from my dad. He understood a lot about the industry. As he got older, I watched him become more and more passionate about trying to protect the land and care for it. I remember him talking about, you know, if we could just get this farm covered in grass, that would be what's best for it. And I look at what we're doing right now, and I know it's depleting all the resources we need. We can change that and create a future of abundance for my kids. That's what probably drives me the most. I'm at the mode of finding out ways to make my farm more productive while regenerating the resources we depend upon. I have tried to advocate for the land. I hope I've done well there, and I'm really honored to have the award because it puts a lot of meaning into what I'm trying to do.
We're super proud, very honored that Pinhook Farm and Seth has received this. It really is something that supports what he's doing and that motto of making the best better.
I just want this to be something that helps all the farmers in Iowa. I want to make sure I do right by them.